Well, good afternoon. My name is Dyke Hendrickson, and this is the podcast, Life Along the Merrimack. We meet once a week. Sometimes it's repeated. We're on Joppa Radio 96.3. We're in local cable, Channel 9. And we also go up on, in terms of, it's cataloged on television as well. I'm with Susan Bernhard, who is the chair of the board of the Maritime Museum here in Newburyport. Susan, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Dyke. The pleasure is all mine.
So Susan is the head of the board of directors of the Custom House Maritime Museum. And maybe for some people who aren't as familiar, Susan, you could just talk about what the museum is, what education you bring, and what are some of the things that you folks are interested in.
The Custom House Maritime Museum started just less than 50 years ago. And what it became was an organic organization whereby people in the community would donate items they thought would be worthy of promoting in the maritime history. That has grown again organically, and to the point where we took an old building from the 70s and we rented it for $1 a year through the Newburyport redevelopment until 2 years ago when we were given ownership. At that point, we started making renovations and updating the museum interior as well as new exhibits from the collections. So what it was 5 years ago is totally different than what it is this year. So I'm hoping everyone who hears this will come in and see all the new collections that are out and being exhibited, and the tavern exhibit as well.
It's a public venue, and it gives attention to the U.S. Coast Guard. Of course, the Merrimack River in Newburyport is the birthplace of the Coast Guard. It also has outside events, Susan. I think I spoke there about 2 weeks ago, but last week, I believe you had a wedding there. So that was quite exciting.
We have grown. Yes, we have. So as you know, members are invited to what we have a First Friday lecture series. And it's been wonderful, such as yourself, Dyke. We've just had, we have everything on YouTube. I can't even name everyone who's been there, but we just did about the, I'm trying to recall the clock that we just had the renovations on. I apologize. We have Dr. Clarice Perrier doing on Custom House research in September. We have military militia that's coming in October, as well as Rita Parisi, and Jack Santos is going to do a wheelwright family, also part of maritime history in October.
Well, it is a great museum, and there's much to be seen there. It's a public venue, as Susan mentioned. And I want to talk about that a little more in a moment. But when I think about Merrimack and the history and health of the river, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast, you went to school in Lowell, and you were one of the early people, I'm thinking, who were part of the Merrimack River Watershed Council. Can you talk about that? I think it goes back to the 70s. So talk about your involvement, and then I assume our river has improved significantly since then.
Oh, yes, I did. I did work through my undergraduate years in the early 70s on the Merrimack River, whereby we would do what we call hatch acts along the river and assess wetlands. We actually worked, how I got to know Newburyport was doing a program for a plater in Merrimack, Massachusetts, who was polluting in the river, and they wanted to clean it up from the dyes they put in it. So I was fortunate. I was a young student, and I was on the first Merrimack River Watershed Commission. At that point, our mission was, if we could clean up the Merrimack River, we will clean up the businesses and the residential along the river and make it more economically better for the environment. So, and I think you could attest that that did work with all the work that everyone did on that throughout the years between the Watershed Commission and the state.
Well, one big event also, which we sometimes talk about, it's federal regulation 1972, the Clean Water Act. Senator Husky's from Maine was instrumental in that. But I was talking on this program a few weeks ago to Charlie Tantar, who is a city councilor here in Newburyport. He's running for mayor. But, you know, when he was saying in the 70s, he was in crew, and he was at Georgetown University, and he came up for an event on the Merrimack at Lowell, or, you know, put forth by a lot of the colleges. And partner fell out of the kayak and out of the shell into the river. And so he and his partner get ready to get back into the shell, and the people come over and said, wait, you just fell into the Merrimack River. Washed off, go to the ER, and still kind of jokes about that. So that was from the early 70s. So I think things have certainly improved since then.
Oh, they were horrible. They were horrible, Dyke. The odors. We did one of my labs, I believe, when I was an undergraduate, we had to do a rat study on how many rats there were on the river. And the thought was, oh, you don't see them, so there's no rats here. And then you put out, we put out oranges with peanut butter, and there was quite a few. So.
Yeah. And it seems like, you know, as you indicate, a lot of companies have cleaned up. A lot of businesses want to do the right thing. So the years, things have gotten cleaner. And since we're in summer, more than 1,500 pleasure boats are tied up, or at least registered with the Newburyport Harbor Master, and about 500 more in other parts. So there's a lot of commerce and a lot of activity on the river. But
Dyke, you mentioned that was a vision that was there in the 70s, is to have those pleasure boats back, as well as seeing the industry be more of tourists coming back. And that, a lot of that, what you said, was the Clean Water Act, as well as putting in the sewage treatment plant in Lowell, in downriver, with Lawrence and Haverhill going forth. I know there's an issue now, but there's a lot of years between 1973 and now. So it's just a matter of putting more money and resources into it.
Yeah, I think that's happening. There is a bill out there now that Lori Trahan from Lowell and Seth Moulton from the North Shore are pushing, which is low interest loans for some of these sewage treatment plants in Haverhill, Lawrence, and Manchester, New Hampshire. I would say that Newburyport, you know, is in good standing right now. It put a huge addition on, an improvement on, about 6 years ago, $35 million. Well, these communities upriver that you're talking about, Lowell, Lawrence, and Haverhill, they know they've got to do better. They've got to do better. They are trying to do so. So we'll just see how it works out.
Oh, I mean, we have to, exactly. They're doing a great job, and a lot of good work has happened. It's just now we're in a different time period and different changes that we have to incorporate to make it better. But going back to the Custom House and the Maritime Museum, you know, one of the reasons that we're in business, as you would, is to make sure that we promote the maritime history along that river. I mean, we're going back to the 1700s when we have shipbuilding along in Newburyport. We were one of the largest shipbuilders in the country until the steamships started coming into play. But that's our history, and we keep promoting that part of the history as well as the current history.
So you've had some good news lately. I understand that you recently received a gift from a donor in the area. Maybe you can talk a little about the gift and a few of the things that your board is talking about. I think it's for about $100,000. Do you have plans for that, or are you still in the talking stage?
We're in the talking stage, to answer the latter part of the question. Yes, Dan Healy III, he's a local native and active business owner of the Amesbury community. Dan served as recently as CEO and co-founder of Arc Technology, is also owner and manager of many of the industrial properties in the area. He's owner of one of the local marinas in Amesbury as well. Dan has supported all the local businesses and cultural activities and charitable foundations. So when he visited the Custom House recently, He went on a tour with his crew of the Everglade. I don't know if you saw the boat. It was here in Newburyport over Yankee Homecoming. So came along with his crew, and he toured the museum with Joan Whitlow, our executive director, Paul Swindlehurst, who's also a director on the board, and John Maley, who's a docent. And during the tour, he was so impressed, he informed us he wanted to give us a gift. So obviously we were thrilled about that. He made a comment. His grandfather came to Newburyport from Ireland in 1921. He said that Newburyport was always the key place where his family started. And when his grandfather was here, he worked along the docks on the old Flying Yankee clipper ship.
I remember.
And so Dan, when we went through what the Custom House was doing as far as renovations and growth and vision, Dan informed me on August 6th that he would like to donate $100,000 of unrestricted funds. But not only did he give us a financial donation, he also committed to becoming a member of an advisory board we're trying to put together of local business and city leaders. Along with his donation, he's going to continue to help the museum as far as trying to find temporary storage for our collection. We need to restore and preserve that. We just don't have the space internally for it.
Well, Joan Whitlow, who, as you mentioned, is the director, active director, she has a lot of experience in keeping inventory and keeping the museum. And so I think that must be an asset at this point. It was built in 1835, it's been renovated, of course, but I know keeping these collections must be a priority.
It is. And Dyke, you've been in and out of the museum for a number of years. So when I came on the board, which was 5 years ago, we were renting it. So we did not own it. You couldn't get grants if you didn't own the property. And at that point, the roof was leaking. We had leakage in the main galleries. The windows were sieves, if you would, of the weather coming in and out. So a lot has happened with CPC money, which we're so thankful of. That's allowed us to redo the roof, the slate roof that was just repaired.
CPC is community preservation, am I correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes. We've been very blessed with that support of the community on that. So the slate roof was redone. We have had restricted funds for windows that we worked on, and we did that. Some annual fund money had come in that we did drainage repairs. And we've done a large assessment recently with Greg Collins, if you know from Merrimack Architectural, and who's given us a overview of what's needed to preserve the building. So our focus is continue to preserve the building so we can move forward and we can get the program started inside.
I'm speaking with Susan Bernhard, who is the chair of the board of the Maritime Museum here in Newburyport. I'm Dyke Hendrickson. The podcast is Life Along the Merrimack. It's on 96.3 FM radio and local Channel 9 TV, and is on YouTube as well. So Susan, you have some things coming up this fall. I mean, you've had a busy summer, I know, but I think, second week of September, you have some activities. Perhaps you can talk about what's planned for September 10th and in that area. You're active and it's going to be a pretty busy time.
Thanks for the opportunity. I think, as you said, it's been busy. For the Custom House, we stayed open all year. As you know, we opened up last July and we did the renovations before. So our whole mission has been to support the downtown area and the downtown businesses for tourism. But last year we had to call off our Maritime days. We couldn't do it with COVID. This year, we discussed it in December. In January, when we would have been bringing in and signing for another ship, we had to put it on hold because the governor had not opened up the state at that point. Vaccines hadn't been released. So after May, when the word came that we could open up, we decided to do a modified
Mhm.
Maritime Days. So what we'll do is September 10th through September 12th, Friday through Sunday, we have 3 main events occurring for fundraisers. And then we have also occurring is an open house to the museum with activities and events outside and lectures, and admission will be free through the weekend. The Friday night, we are launching a new event. We have 2 new events, and that is it will be Maritime Tavern Night. It is it will be a lot of fun. It's going to be the Portermen singing sea shanties,
Mhm.
a local Facebook trivia group, which is a collaboration between the Custom Maritime Museum and the Museum of Old Newbury. They'll be hosting a trivia contest. They are going to have a what they're calling a pizza palooza, where people are going to be voting for their favorite pizzas. But we have 10 pizza establishments
Wow.
donating pizzas. We have beer from Ipswich Ale and wine from New England Wine and Spirits. So there'll be a lot going on that night at Maritime Days. Will be a lot of fun. Just it's a takeoff. We have a tavern exhibit ongoing in the museum, and this is a takeoff on that to continue it outside and bring it to the community. On Saturday morning, this is a real big event for us, is a new one. It's called the it's Maritime Treasure Hunt.
Mhm.
And it's really it's a history mystery chase all through Newburyport and downtown areas. It's an epic clues and riddles that you'll have to solve as teams of 20, 6-member teams of 20 are going to fan out across the streets, and they're going to use their wits and their wisdoms to solve about a dozen clues. And the first team that wins to solve the clue will win the grand prize, which is a day sail on a 40-foot catamaran. So that includes lunch and
That sounds interesting. I hope you're getting Glee Woodworth on the scene. She's the local historian, and Glee just about everything about the old time Newburyport.
Actually, Lee and Cheryl Spinador is on the team. So we have a lot of the local historians taking part on that one. That's really doing the clues. Jennifer, Jermaine, and Sharon are actually heading up that committee. And Jennifer worked on this type of program for West Newbury for the PTA years ago. And they are very, very involved with these clues. I'm telling you, this is if you think getting into a locked room and getting out is anything, this is really about teamwork and working together to solve these questions. So yeah, it'll be a lot.
That sounds great. And you're also having a meal of high proportion, and maybe you can talk about that.
Actually, with the last event's is the pirate party. This is our annual costume pirate party, and we are excited because we have the Baja Brothers coming, who's a well-known Jimmy Buffett tribute band. They once played backup to Jimmy Buffett. So we're really excited about having them on board. We have Privateer Rum sponsoring the rum drinks. We have Riverwalk sponsoring the beer, as well as, again, New England Wine and Spirits for the wine. So that's going to be a rockin' night. We'll have a special guest. Dana Marshall's going to come in and say a few words, and we'll have a best costume prize for that one. We are going to not do a seated table at this event. We're going to move that out to later in the year. So
it seems like the museum and the board has a lot of momentum right now. What do you attribute that to, Susan? I mean, you're a key board member, I know, but is the community getting more involved, or are times changing, and maybe after COVID, people want to get busy? A lot's going on. So what do you attribute it to?
I think we've always had an engaged board, so we've been very fortunate as time goes on. I think right now, our whole mission the last 2 years has been to cross promote, not only the Custom House Maritime Museum, but all other cultural nonprofits in the area. We have focused strongly on doing teamwork across the board, as we still continue to do. We are all better when we work together, not apart. And we have the same local supporters. We want tourists to come here to support the local businesses. It behooves all of us to work together to develop our cultural center. So,
it does look terrific. And in terms of the fall, the venue is open to the public, of course. What are the exhibits that you like to talk about? There are numerous ones, but if you could just isolate a couple exhibits that people would see if they came in September.
I think the biggest, I always go to the one in the Maudsley Gallery. What we have there is we have two women. We've divided up the gallery into vignettes, and the vignettes are there so that we can turn them in. We can move them in and out to update them, make it easier. But we have two women being highlighted, and that's Lizabray and Elizabeth Gray. And if you can find those and the stories of their journals and the stories of the ships that and their husbands that were the merchants and the captains on that, those are really exciting. I think the other one is the one I would say is downstairs for the Pettingill. That's only going to be there for a short time coming up. And again, another female story where you see her husband, she toured with her husband on her ship. And when they went into San Francisco, while the crew was off, they were attacked and her husband was stabbed. And while they were there, it tells her story. And that's another exhibit I think is very exciting. And you can't, obviously the privateer exhibit is in the Brown Gallery is just amazing with Captain Nichols. So,
Elizabeth Bray, as I recall my history, her husband in mid-19th century, her husband was a captain. She worked with him on, in those days, the ship could be gone for a year or 2 years. And
right.
I remember the story. She took her little daughter, who was 4 or 5, for this 2-year ship with dad and herself. But two of her boys were still on the, at the wharf when the ship pulled out. And of course, they had a lot of family in town. It wasn't like they were leaving, but what an exciting thing for a little girl, 4 or 5, the wife and the family. And so you have some very interesting diaries and recollections of that trip.
I do. And I just think it's amazing, to your point, pulling away, watching your other children stay behind, and then you don't come back for 2 years, and then she comes back and leaves again. It was, and then, there's another story about Captain Watts, who also in his diary, there's some takeout verbiage shown on the wall. And, we think of that time period where the writing would be, how are you? This is my day. We got up on the ship. We did this. We did that. We ate this. We ate that. Hope you're well. Bye. But that's not what he wrote. He asked about each child. He was concerned about his wife. He brought her up to date as to everything he was doing. It was very personal. And it was captivating to hear from, again, the 1800s, in the 1700s, that the endearing qualities of the couple.
Well, you mentioned this, and I'll just say it for our listeners, is Newburyport was the premier port of New England and in the 18th and 19th centuries. And Samuel Eliot Morison, the great historian of the 20th century, said, even though Newburyport was small, nothing was greater in terms of shipbuilding or ship commerce. So you're bringing out these anecdotes is very interesting, because we kind of know how remarkable Newburyport was, but having these assets in the museum, for people just learning about this, it must be quite intriguing.
Oh, it is. I mean, and think about it. I mean, we have this beautiful model of the dreadnought, and when people see the dreadnought and to tell the story of why that mattered to Newburyport being the fastest clipper ship in the world, and that was built here. It's just, and because of that, and you may find some locals now that are very concerned about Newburyport. We have always been a working boat yards down here along the river, and people now are concerned as we go forward is what's going to happen to our local boat yards. So it ties in.
Yeah, there's a lot of history. Well, thank people for listening and watching today. I'm with Susan Bernhard, who is the chair of the board of directors of the Maritime Museum. This is Life Along the Merrimack, 96.3 Joppa Radio and local cable channel 9 on cable TV. And you have, again, a lot of things going on, Susan. Thank you for being here. And if you could just highlight a couple things that will be happening in September, we'll call it an afternoon. What are you looking forward to in September?
I'm looking forward to Maritime Days. And let me make sure I tell everyone, we do have a presenting sponsor for Maritime Days, and that is the Newburyport Bank, that we're very thankful for them for their continuous support. Also, we have Dr. Clarice Poirier, and she is the author of a writing of the Montana that was owned by the Mosley family. Dr. Poirier does research out of the museum, and she's going to give a insight on the first Friday on September 3rd as to the research that's available at the museum as we promote that. Again, we have the Maritime Days in September, the 10th and 12th. And don't forget, as you mentioned, thank you for mentioning too, was the Custom House is also available for events. We do weddings. We did with graduations. There's rentals on the back lawn and inside. And recently we launched a business membership that gives discounts to in free time at the museum to the local businesses. So with that going on, we I think if we get through September, then we can start talking about all that we have in October. Maybe you can get Joan on and do that, because Joan and the programs team has done a wonderful job, especially with the music series this year, all through the summer. And that was started to promote the local artists and give a venue for them to raise money for them that they lost. So,
well, this has been great. Susan Bernhard has been my guest. I'm Dyke Hendrickson. The podcast is Life Along the Merrimack. We talk about the health and history about the Merrimack River. And the Custom House Maritime Museum, built in 1835, is certainly part of this great history. So thank you for being here, Susan. I'm going to sign off. Be here next week. You can see us on YouTube, or you can listen to us elsewhere. And Susan, thank you very much again for being here.
thanks for having me.